Look at my hands,
Look at my hands.
Zola.
They're stained.
Look at them. They are stained with things you cannot wash away. They are stained with choices that end lives. I do not see stains, Tae-Kyung. I see the hands that pulled me from the floor when the bullets started flying. I see the hands that shook when you held a cup of tea because you were too terrified to hold a gun. You are confusing gratitude with safety. I am not safe. I am a walking death sentence. If you stay with me, the world will burn you down just to get to me. Then let it burn, because I have lived in the cold for 26 years, and you are the first fire that has ever made me feel warm. If this story grabs your heart, hit that like button right now. I want to know in the comments, have you ever met someone who scared you and saved you at the same time? Would you run toward the danger or away from it? Subscribe for more stories about love that defies every rule of survival. Now listen closely. The humidity in New Orleans does not just sit on your skin. It weighs you down. It presses against your chest like a heavy hand, reminding you that you are small and the air is thick with history and ghosts. It was a Tuesday night in the French Quarter, the kind of night where the streetlights have halos of mist around them and the jazz floating out of the doorways sounds more like a funeral dirge than a celebration. The Indigo Hour was a dive bar on the edge of the tourist district. It was the kind of place you only found if you were lost or if you didn't want to be found. The neon sign above the door flickered with a dying buzz, casting a bruised purple light onto the wet pavement. Inside, the air smelled of stale beer, lemon polish, and the deep, earthy scent of chicory coffee brewing in the back. Zola and Becky wiped down the mahogany counter for the 100th time that night. Her arm moved in slow, rhythmic circles. She was 26 years old, but her eyes held the kind of exhaustion that usually belongs to someone twice her age. She had left Cape Town 4 years ago, chasing a dream that had slowly turned into a survival plan. Every dollar she made went into a wire transfer at the end of the month, sent back across the ocean to pay for dialysis treatments for a sister she hadn't hugged in years. Zola was beautiful in a way that the Indigo Hour didn't deserve. She had skin the color of deep obsidian and a grace in her movements that made pouring a draft beer look like a ceremony. But tonight, she was just tired. Her feet ached in her worn-out sneakers. The owner, a grumpy man named Earl, had already left, leaving her to close up shop. It was 2 a.m. The bar was empty, except for a fly buzzing against the front window. Zola reached for the remote to turn off the jukebox when the door flew open. The storm had started 10 minutes ago, a sudden, violent downpour that turned the streets into rivers. The wind howled as the door swung wide, bringing the smell of rain and ozone into the stale bar. And then he stepped inside. He looked like a man who had walked out of a nightmare. He was tall, dressed in a suit that was clearly expensive but ruined by the rain. The charcoal fabric was soaked through, clinging to his frame. His tie was loosened, hanging crookedly around his neck. His black hair was plastered to his forehead, dripping water into his eyes. But it was his face that made Zola freeze. He was Korean, with sharp, aristocratic features that should have been handsome. But right now he was pale, a sickly, ghostly white. His lips were parted as he gasped for air, and his eyes were wide, blown pupils staring at nothing. He looked like he was vibrating. He didn't look at Zola. He walked straight to the bar, his movements jerky and uncoordinated. He grabbed the edge of the counter, like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Whiskey. The word tore out of his throat. It sounded like gravel. Bottle. Now. Zola stared at him. She had worked in bars since she was 18. She knew drunks. She knew addicts. She knew men who were angry and men who were sad. But this man wasn't drunk. He was terrified. He was shattering. His hands were gripping the wood of the bar, so hard that his knuckles were white, and they were shaking, violently. The kind of tremors that come when your nervous system is misfiring, when the adrenaline is so high it becomes poison. He looked up at her when she didn't move. His eyes were voids. There was no light in them, only a desperate, screaming panic. "Did you hear me?" He snapped, though his voice cracked. "Give me the drink. I need to make it stop." "Make what stop?" Zola asked softly. The noise in my head." Zola looked at the top-shelf whiskey behind her. "It would be easy. Pour the drink. Take the money. Let him drown. Whatever demons were chasing him, that was the job. But Zola came from a line of women who heal with their hands and their hearts. Her grandmother in the Eastern Cape used to say that you never feed a starving spirit with poison. You feed it with warmth. She didn't reach for the whiskey. Instead, she turned around and walked to the small kitchenette behind the bar. She could hear the man breathing, ragged, wet gasps like a drowning swimmer. She ignored him. She reached for the ceramic teapot she kept for herself. She put the kettle on. She scooped loose-leaf rooibos tea into the strainer, the red leaves smelling of earth and vanilla and home. She added a spoon of honey. When she turned back around, the man was staring at her with confusion breaking through the panic. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "I ordered whiskey." "You don't need whiskey. Sugar." Zola placed a steaming mug in front of him. The steam rose up, curling between them. "Whiskey makes the ghosts louder. You need to warm your hands." He stared at the mug like it was a grenade. "My hands?" he whispered. "They're shaking." Zola leaned her elbows on the counter, bringing her face level with his. She wasn't afraid. She should have been. This man radiated danger, but she saw the boy beneath the suit. "You're carrying something too heavy tonight. Put it down for a minute. Just for a minute." The man looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the kindness etched into the corners of her eyes. He saw the strength in her jaw. He saw a woman who was offering him grace when he deserved none. Slowly, painfully, he unclenched his hand from the bar. He reached out. His fingers trembled as they wrapped around the warm ceramic. The heat seeped into his skin. He lifted the mug to his lips and took a sip. The taste of rooibos hit him. It didn't burn like alcohol. It soothed. It tasted like earth. He closed his eyes. And then he exhaled, a long, shuddering breath that seemed to deflate his entire body. His shoulders dropped. The vibration in his skin slowed. He opened his eyes again. The void was receding. "What is this?" he asked quietly. "Rooibos. It's from my home. South Africa." Zola smiled, a small, sad thing. "It's what my mother gave me when the world felt too big." The man took another sip. He held the mug with both hands now, anchoring himself to the warmth. "I am Tae-Kyung," he said. It sounded like a confession. "I'm Zola." They stood there in the silence of the empty bar, the rain hammering against the glass. A black waitress and a broken Korean man, sharing a cup of tea in the middle of the night. Tae-Kyung Ryu stayed for an hour. He didn't say another word. He just drank the tea and watched Zola clean. He watched the way she moved, efficient and graceful. He watched the way she hummed to herself, a low, melodic sound that filled the empty spaces of the room. When he finally stood up to leave, the tremors were gone. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a money clip. He peeled off 5 $100 bills and placed them on the counter. Zola looked at the money, then at him. "The tea is $3, Tae-Kyung. Consider it a tip." His voice was steady now, clipped and precise. A faint accent wrapped around his words. For the silence. Zola picked up the bills and walked around the counter. She grabbed his hand, his cold, elegant hand, and pressed the money back into his palm. "I'm a waitress, not a charity case. And I'm definitely not someone you pay for silence." Zola looked him in the eye. "You want to pay me? Come back tomorrow. Order something from the menu. And tell me your name again, so I know you remembered it." Tae-Kyung looked at the money in his hand. He looked at this woman who defied every expectation he had of the world. In his world, everyone took, everyone wanted, everyone had a price. "I will remember," he said. He walked out into the rain, and for the first time in weeks, he didn't feel like putting a gun in his mouth. He came back the next night, and the night after that. Tae-Kyung became a ghost in the corner of the indigo hour. He always sat in the booth furthest from the door, his back against the wall, giving him a clear view of the entire room. He wore different suits, navy blue, charcoal, black, always tailored to perfection, always expensive. But the exhaustion never left his eyes. He never ordered alcohol. As soon as he sat down, Zola would bring him a mug of rooibos tea or a cup of dark roast coffee. They developed a ritual, a dance of observation. Tae-Kyung watched Zola. He saw the way she handled the drunk tourist with a sharp tongue and a sharper glare. He saw the way she slipped a free sandwich to the homeless man who knocked on the back door at midnight. He saw the way she rubbed her lower back when she thought no one was looking. Zola watched him too. She saw the way he scanned the room every time the door opened, his muscles tensing like a coiled spring. She saw the scars on his knuckles, faint white lines that spoke of violence. She saw the phone he kept on the table, face down, which vibrated constantly with messages he ignored. They were two lonely people orbiting each other in the dark. One quiet Wednesday, 3 weeks after they met, the silence broke. Zola was wiping tables near his booth. She was humming again a slow, mournful tune in Kosa, the language of her grandmother. "What is that song?" Tae-Kyung asked. His voice startled her. He rarely spoke first. Zola straightened up, clutching the rag. "It's a lullaby. My sister used to sing it. It's about a bird with a broken wing, waiting for the wind to carry it home." "It sounds sad," he said. "It is." Zola sat down in the booth opposite him. It was a breach of protocol, but Earl wasn't there, and she was tired of the distance. But it's a hopeful sad. It means even if you're broken, you can still fly if you wait for the right wind. Tae-Kyung looked down at his coffee. "I do not believe in hope. Hope is a strategy for fools. That's a grim way to live. It is a realistic way to live." He looked up at her. "Where I come from, hope gets you killed. Preparation keeps you alive." "And where do you come from, Tae-Kyung?" "Not geographically. I know a Seoul accent when I hear one. I mean, where does your spirit live? Because it's clearly not here." Tae-Kyung was silent for a long moment. He traced the rim of his mug. "My spirit lives in a house with high walls and cold floors. It lives in a place where love is a currency and weakness is a capital offense." Zola nodded slowly. "I know that house. I didn't grow up rich, Tae-Kyung. I grew up in a township where the wind blew through the walls. But the feeling, needing to be strong just to survive the morning, I know that. We are both exiles," he said softly. "Yes." Zola looked at the rain streaking the window. "But at least I'm trying to build a new home. You just waiting for the old one to collapse on top of you." Tae-Kyung looked at her with a flash of intensity that made her breath hitch. "You see too much, Zola. I see a man who is tired of running. I am not running. I am waiting." "For what?" "For the end." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Zola wanted to reach across the table and shake him. She wanted to tell him that life was worth fighting for, but she saw the look in his eyes. He meant it. He was a man standing on a ledge, waiting for gravity to do its job. She reached out and covered his hand with hers. His skin was cool. Hers was warm. "Then wait here," she whispered. "If you're going to wait for the end, don't do it alone in the dark. Wait here with me." Tae-Kyung looked at her hand. He didn't pull away. For the first time, he turned his hand over and interlaced his fingers with hers. "Okay," he said. "I will wait here." That touch was a spark. It was a moment the dynamic shifted from waitress and customer to something dangerous and vital. Thursday night was open mic night at the Indigo Hour. Usually, it was a mix of college kids with acoustic guitars and old blues men trying to recapture their glory days. But Zola always sang one song. It was the only time she allowed herself to really be seen. The bar was fuller than usual. The air was thick with smoke and chatter. Tae-Kyung was in his corner, a shadow among shadows. When Zola stepped onto the small stage, the room didn't go silent immediately. She adjusted the microphone stand, the sequins on her thrift store dress catching the stage lights. She closed her eyes. She took a breath, and then she sang. She didn't sing a pop song. She didn't sing jazz. She sang Strange Fruit. Her voice was a force of nature. It started low, a rumble in chest, and rose into a wail that raised a hair on everyone's arms. It was pain and history and defiance wrapped in melody. The room went dead silent. Glasses stopped clinking. Conversations died. Tae-Kyung watched her, mesmerizing. He had sat in boardrooms where billions of dollars changed hands. He had stood in warehouses while men begged for their lives. He thought he knew power. But this was power. As he watched her, the static noise in his head, the constant calculation of threats, the paranoia, the strategic planning of the Civil War tearing his family syndicate apart, went silent. For the first time in 10 years, his mind was quiet. There was only her voice. He felt something loosen in his chest. A knot he hadn't known was there. He realized, with a terrifying clarity, that he didn't want to die. Not yet. Not while there was a sound like this in the world. Zola finished the song on a high, haunting note that lingered in the air long after she stopped singing. There was a beat of silence, and then the room exploded in applause. She smiled shy and flushed and stepped off the stage. She made a beeline for Tae-Kyung's booth, dodging compliments and tips. She slid into the seat across from him, breathless, her eyes shining. "Well?" she asked. "Was it okay?" Tae-Kyung looked at her. He wanted to tell her that she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. He wanted to tell her that she had just saved his life again. It was adequate, he said, his face impassive. Zola laughed, throwing her head back. "You are impossible. Adequate. You wouldn't know soul if it bit you on the nose." "I suppose not. But," he hesitated, "you have a gift, Zola. A dangerous gift. It makes people feel things they do not want to feel. Is that a bad thing? For men like me?" "Yes. Feelings are distractions." Zola leaned forward, her face serious. "Maybe you need to be distracted, Tae-Kyung. Maybe you need to feel something other than fear." They were close now. The table seemed to shrink. The noise of the bar faded into background. Tae-Kyung could smell her perfume, vanilla and rain. He could see the pulse beating in her throat. He leaned in. The urge to kiss her was overwhelming. It was a physical ache. "Zola," he whispered. "Yeah." Her voice was breathless. The sound of shattering glass broke the world. It wasn't just a glass falling. It was a front window exploding inward. The sound of a tactical shotgun is distinct. It is a wet, heavy boom that shakes the floorboards. Zola screamed as the glass showered the front of the bar. Patrons doved the floor. Chaos erupted. Tae-Kyung moved before Zola's brain could even process what was happening. 1 second, he was a quiet man in the booth. The next, he was a blur of motion. He launched himself across the table, tackling Zola. He wrapped his arms around her, twisting his body in midair, so that he landed on top of her on the dirty floor of the booth, shielding her with his own back. "Stay down," he roared. 2 men stepped through the shattered window. They wore black tactical gear and masks. They held sawed-off shotguns. They weren't robbers. They moved with military precision. They scanned the room. "Where is he?" One shouted in Korean. "Where is Park?" Zola, crushed beneath Tae-Kyung, felt his heart hammering against her chest. But it wasn't the erratic panic beat of that first night. It was slow, heavy, the rhythm of a predator. He spoke into her ear. His voice was ice. "Count to 3, then run for the back door. Do not look back." "What?" "No." Zola gripped his jacket. "Do as I say." Tae-Kyung rolled off her. He stood up. He didn't have a weapon. He was just a man in a ruined suit standing in the middle of a bar fight. "I am here," he shouted in Korean. His voice was authoritative, commanding. It cut through the screams. The 2 gunmen turned toward him, the barrels of their shotguns raised. Tae-Kyung didn't flinch. He walked toward them. It was suicide. Zola watched from beneath the table, her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. But as the first gunman fired, Tae-Kyung moved. He didn't run away. He ran at the gunman. He slid on the beer-slick floor, coming in low, under the spread of the buckshot that tore apart the booth where they had just been sitting. He kicked the man's knee, a sickening crack echoing through the room. The gunman buckled. Tae-Kyung rose in a fluid motion, grabbing the barrel of the shotgun and twisting it. He ripped the weapon from the man's hands and used the stock to smash the man's jaw. The second gunman turned. Tae-Kyung didn't hesitate. He racked the slide of the stolen shotgun and fired. 1 shot. Center mass. The second gunman flew backward, crashing through a table. The first gunman, the one with the broken knee, reached for a sidearm. Tae-Kyung dropped the shotgun, stepped on the man's wrist, and kicked him in the temple. The man went limp. Silence crashed back into the room. Heavy, ringing. It had taken maybe 6 seconds. Tae-Kyung stood in the center of the destruction. His chest was heaving. There was blood on his knuckles. He looked around the room, his eyes scanning for more threats. He looked like a demon. He looked efficient. He looked terrifying. Zola crawled out from under the table. Her legs were shaking so hard she could barely stand. Tae-Kyung turned to look at her, and the mask crumbled. The cold, lethal efficiency vanished, replaced by a look of utter devastation. He looked at Zola, and then he looked at the blood on his hands. He looked like he wanted to vomit. "Zola," he rasped. Zola took a step toward him. He flinched back. "Don't," he said. "Don't come near me. You see? You see what I am?" "I see you alive," Zola said, her voice shaking. "I see you saved me. I brought this here." He gestured to the bodies. "This is my world. Zola, this is the darkness I told you about. These men came for me. Because of who I am. Because of what I have done." "Who are you?" Zola asked. "I am not a businessman. I am the head of the Ryu syndicate. I am a killer. And you are a target now." Sirens wailed in the distance. Blue lights flashed against the broken glass. Tae-Kyung looked at the door. He had to go. If the police found him here, with these bodies, it was over. His uncle, the man who had sent these assassins, would have him killed in custody within an hour. He looked at Zola one last time, a look of longing and regret that broke her heart. "Forget me," he said. He turned and ran toward the back exit. Zola stood there for a heartbeat. She looked at the bodies. She looked at the police lights. She thought about her sister. She thought about her safe, quiet life that was barely holding together. Then she thought about the man who drank tea because he was scared. She thought about the way he held her hand. She realized something terrifying. He wasn't running to save himself. He was running to draw the fire away from her. Zola cursed. She kicked off her heels. And she ran. She burst out the back door into the alleyway. The rain was still falling, a torrential sheet of water. Tae-Kyung was halfway down the alley, moving toward a black sedan that had just pulled up. A massive man was getting out of the driver's seat. "Tae-Kyung!" Zola screamed. He stopped. He turned around, shock written all over his face. "Go back!" He shouted over the rain. "Go inside. I'm not letting you go." Zola sprinted toward him. She grabbed his arm, her grip fierce. "You don't get to save my life and then walk away to die. Zola, you don't understand. These men, there will be more. My uncle will not stop. I am a dead man walking." Then we walked together. Zola yelled back, "I'm not staying here to explain this to police. I'm not staying here to be the girl who knew the mob boss. I'm coming with you. You are insane. Maybe, but I'm also the only friend you've got." The driver, a giant Korean man with a scar running down his neck, looked at Tae-Kyung. "Boss, we have to move. Police are turning the corner." Tae-Kyung looked at Zola. He looked at the defiance in her eyes. He knew he should push her away. He knew he should leave her for her own good. But he was selfish. God help him. He was selfish. He didn't want to die alone. He grabbed her hand. "Get in," he said. They dove into the back of the sedan. The driver slammed the gas. The tires screeched on the wet pavement, and the car shot forward, disappearing into the labyrinth of the French Quarter just as the police cruisers skidded to a halt at the mouth of the alley. The car was a cocoon of silence and leather. Outside, the city blurred by. Zola sat pressed against the door, shivering. Her adrenaline was crashing. She wrapped her arms around herself, her teeth chattering. Tae-Kyung sat on the other side of the seat. He was staring straight ahead. He had pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and was wiping the blood off his hands, rubbing, scrubbing, like he could erase the last 10 minutes. Zola watched him. "Are you okay?" she asked. The question was ridiculous. "No," he said. He didn't look at her. "I am not okay. And you have just made the worst mistake of your life." "Why? Because I got in the car? Because now you are part of the war. My uncle Dae-hyun, he kills everything I touch. You are now a liability." Zola laughed, a sharp, hysterical sound. "A liability? I just watched you kung fu two guys with shotguns. I think I'm the one who should be worried about liabilities." Tae-Kyung finally looked at her. His eyes were dark pools of regret. I tried to warn you. I tried to tell you I was a monster. Zola reached across the seat. She took the bloody handkerchief from his hand. She took his hand in hers. Stop calling yourself that, she said firmly. Monsters don't shake after a fight. Monsters don't try to save the waitress. You're just a man, Tae-Kyung. A man in a lot of trouble. Where are we going? She asked the driver. The driver looked in the rearview mirror, his eyes hard. The Bayou, Mississippi. The Ryu family has a safe house. Off the grid. No one knows about it except the boss. We will hide there, Tae-Kyung said, for a few days, until I can contact my loyalists in Seoul, until I can figure out how to kill my uncle before he kills us. And then, Zola asked, and then if we're still alive, I will set you free. I promise. Zola looked out the window. The city lights were fading. The dense, dark wall of the Louisiana swamp was rising up to meet them. I didn't ask to be set free, she whispered to the glass. Tae-Kyung heard her. He closed his eyes and leaned his head back against the seat. He reached out blindly, his hand seeking hers on the leather seat. When their fingers brushed, he latched onto her. He held on tight, and as the car sped into the darkness, leaving the only life Zola had ever known behind, she didn't feel fear. She felt a strange, terrifying sense of purpose. She was the bird with the broken wing, and she had just found the wind, but the wind was blowing them straight into a storm. The Louisiana Bayou is a place where secrets go to drown. It is a landscape of water and shadow, where cypress trees rise in the black depths like skeletal fingers draped in Spanish moss. The air is heavy, silent, and watchful. The safe house was not a cabin. It was an antebellum estate, a ghost of the old South, rising from an island of solid ground in the middle of the swamp. The paint was peeling, the grandeur faded, but the walls were thick stone and the windows were reinforced. It was a fortress disguised as a ruin. They arrived just before dawn. The mist was curling off the water, white and ghostly. The driver, whose name Zola learned was Jinsu, parked the car in an old barn, hiding it from view. Tae-Kyung led Zola inside. The house smelled of dust and old wood. He moved through the dark rooms with familiarity, flipping switches that activated a silent generator deep underground. Lights flickered on, casting long, eerie shadows. Welcome to the end of the world, Tae-Kyung said. He dropped his jacket on a dusty armchair. Zola looked around. It was cold. It felt empty. Is this where you grew up? She asked. Sometimes. When my father had business in America, he used this place to hide things. Money. Weapons. Me. He walked to the window and stared out at the swamp. His posture was rigid. He was still waiting for an attack. Get some sleep, Zola. There are bedrooms upstairs. Jinsu will stand guard. What about you? I do not sleep. Zola walked up to him. She reached out and touched his shoulder. The muscle under her hand was rock hard. If you don't sleep, you'll make mistakes. And if you make mistakes, we die. Tae-Kyung turned. He looked at her, his eyes red-rimmed and hollow. I see ghosts when I close my eyes. Zola, then keep them open. But lie down. Rest. Please. He looked at her for a long time. Then he nodded. For 3 days, time ceased to exist. The world outside, the police investigation in New Orleans, the power struggle in Seoul, the hitmen combing the state for them, felt like a distant dream. Their reality shrank to the 4 walls of the state and the endless, murky water surrounding them. They fell into a strange domestic rhythm. It was a survival routine, but it felt dangerously like intimacy. Jinsu patrolled the perimeter with an assault rifle, a silent sentinel. Inside, Tae-Kyung worked in the library, surrounded by banks of monitors and encrypted phones, fighting a war with data and voice commands. Zola took over the kitchen. It was an industrial space, stocked with canned goods and dry rations. She worked magic with what she found. On the second night, she made a stew, canned tomatoes, beans, dried spices she found in a forgotten cabinet, and rice. The smell filled the drafty house, chasing away the scent of dust. She brought a bowl to the library. Tae-Kyung was shouting into a phone in Korean, his voice harsh. When he saw her, he hung up abruptly. Eat, Zola said. He looked at the bowl. It is not exactly fine dining. It's hot, and it's made with, well, not love exactly, maybe stubbornness. Tae-Kyung took the bowl. He took a bite. He closed his eyes. It tastes like, he hesitated. Like what? Like something my mother would have made before she died, before this life consumed us. He looked at Zola. The harshness in his face softened. Thank you. You're welcome. Now tell me something. Not about the war. Not about the syndicate. Tell me about you. Who is Tae-Kyung when he isn't the boss? Tae-Kyung put the bowl down. He leaned back in his chair. I wanted to be an architect, he said softly. I love drawing. I love the idea of building things that people could live in, structures that protected them. So why didn't you? Because I was born a Ryu. We do not build. We acquire. We control. My father burned my sketchbooks when I was 12. He put a gun in my hand and told me that was the only tool I would ever need. Zola walked around the desk. She looked at his hands. The hands that killed 2 men in a bar. The hands that were now resting gently on the desk. He was wrong, she said. You can build things, Tae-Kyung. You build a wall around yourself to survive. That takes architecture. You just need to build a door now. Tae-Kyung stood up. He was close to her. Too close. And if I open that door, he whispered, what comes in? Maybe light. Maybe me. He reached out and touched her face. His fingers traced her jawline, reverent and terrified. You're the most dangerous thing I have ever encountered, Zola Mbeki. You make me want things I cannot have. Like what? Like a life. A morning where I do not have to check the perimeter. A night where I can sleep without a weapon under my pillow. Then take it. I can't. Why? Because I am stained. Look at me. He pulled his shirt open, unbuttoning it with jerky movements. Zola looked. His chest and torso were a map of violence. Scars, knife wounds, the pucker of healed bullet holes, burn marks. She reached out. She didn't flinch. She placed her hand flat against his chest, over his heart. She could feel it beating, strong and steady. She traced a long, jagged scar on his ribs. This one? She asked. Knife fight. Busan. I was 16. This one? She touched his shoulder. Sniper. Macau. 3 years ago. She looked up at his face. And this one? She touched the invisible weight in his eyes. That one, he whispered, is from looking in the mirror every day. Zola stepped closer. She wrapped her arms around his waist. She pressed her face against his chest. Scars just mean you survived, Tae-Kyung. They mean you're hard to kill. I like a man who is hard to kill. Tae-Kyung let out a ragged breath. He wrapped his arms around her. He buried his face in her hair. He held her like he was drowning, and she was the only driftwood in the ocean. That night, they didn't sleep in separate rooms. They lay together in the massive master bed, surrounded by the silence of swamp. They didn't have sex. It wasn't about that. It was about contact. Skin against skin. Proof of life. Zola fell asleep with her head on his shoulder. Tae-Kyung stayed awake, watching the moon move across the ceiling. He listened to her breathing. For the first time in his life, he felt something more terrifying than fear. He felt something he could lose. The peace broke on the morning of the 4th day. Zola woke up alone. The other side of the bed was cold. She found Tae-Kyung in the library. He was packing files into a metal briefcase. He was wearing his suit again. His face was a mask of stone. Jinsu was standing by the door, looking grim. What's happening? Zola asked. Tae-Kyung didn't look up. My uncle found us. A satellite sweep picked up the generator heat signature. They are coming. Who is coming? A hit squad. Heavy weapons. They will be here within the hour. Zola felt a cold pit in her stomach. So we fight? No. Tae-Kyung snapped the briefcase shut. We do not fight. I fight. You leave. What? Jinsu is taking the boat. He will take you upriver to a landing strip. There's a plane waiting. It will take you to Canada. You will be safe there. I have accounts set up in your name. Enough money for your sister. Enough for a new life. You're sending me away? Zola's voice rose. Like a package? I am saving your life. Tae-Kyung turned on her, his eyes blazing. Do you think this is a game? These men will not just kill you. They will use you to break me. I cannot fight them if I am worried about you. So you're just going to stay here and die? I am going to end this. One way or another. No. Zola walked up to him. No. I am not leaving you. You have no choice. Tae-Kyung nodded to Jinsu. Before Zola could react, the massive driver moved. He grabbed her arms, pinning them to her sides. He wasn't rough, but he was immovable. Let me go, Zola screamed, kicking and thrashing. Tae-Kyung, don't do this. Tae-Kyung walked over to her. He looked at her face, memorizing it. He reached out and touched her cheek one last time. I love you, he said. The words were quiet, heavy. Then don't send me away. Because I love you, I must. He leaned in and kissed her. It was a kiss of goodbye. It tasted of salt and despair. Take her, Jinsu. Do not stop until she is in the air. Jinsu nodded. Forgive me, miss. He lifted Zola off her feet. She screamed. She fought. She cursed him. But he carried her out of the room, down the hall, and out into the humid morning air. Tae-Kyung watched them go. He stood in the doorway until they disappeared around the corner toward the boathouse. Then, he turned back to the room. He picked up an assault rifle from the table. He checked the magazine. He walked to the window and waited for the monsters to arrive. The boat ride was a blur of noise and wind. Zola sat in the back, huddled against the spray. She had stopped screaming. She was thinking. Jinsu steered the small motorboat through the twisting channels of the swamp. He looked stoic, but Zola could see the tension in his jaw. He didn't like leaving his boss behind. Jinsu, Zola said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Miss, please. Do not make this harder. He's going to die back there. Yes. And you're okay with that? You're supposed to be his loyal soldier. I follow orders. His order was to save you, because he thinks I'm the only thing worth saving. Zola stood up. The boat rocked dangerously. But he's wrong. The world needs him too. The world needs men who try to be better. Sit down, miss. Turn the boat around. I cannot. Zola looked around. She saw the emergency flare gun clipped to the side of the console. She lunged. Jinsu was fast, but he was steering. Zola grabbed the flare gun. She scrambled back, pointing it not at him, but at the fuel tank at the rear of the boat. Turn around, she screamed, or we all burn right here. Jinsu stared at her. He looked at the orange plastic gun in her shaking hand. He looked at the fire in her eyes. Miss, you will kill us both. I'd rather die trying to save him than live knowing I let him die alone. Turn the boat around, Jinsu. Do it. Jinsu looked at her for a long second. Then, a slow smile spread across his face. You are worthy of him, he said. He spun the wheel. The boat banked hard, spraying water, and turned back toward the estate. Back at the house, hell had arrived. Black SUVs had crashed through the gate. Men in body armor were swarming the lawn. Gunfire shattered the windows. Tae-Kyung was pinned down in the library. He was crouched behind an overturned heavy oak desk. Bullets shredded the wood above his head. He fired back blindly. He took down one man, then another, but they were closing in. He could hear them shouting orders. He checked his ammo. One magazine left. He thought of Zola. He hoped she was safe. He hoped she was looking at the clouds from a plane window. At least I did one good thing, he thought. The door to the library was kicked open. A grenade rolled in. Flashbang. It detonated with a blinding white light and a deafening boom. Tae-Kyung collapsed, his ears ringing, his vision washed out. He felt hands grabbing him. He was dragged out from behind the desk. A boot kicked him in the ribs. He gasped, curling into a ball. He was hauled to his feet. His vision cleared slowly. Standing in front of him was his uncle, Dae-hyun, an older man with cold eyes and a cruel smile. Nephew, Dae-hyun said, you have caused me so much trouble. Tae-Kyung spat blood onto the floor. It is over, uncle. Yes, it is. Dae-hyun raised a pistol. He aimed it at Tae-Kyung's forehead. Any last words? Just one, Tae-Kyung rasped. Run. Dae-hyun frowned. What? Boom. A red flare smashed through the window, trailing smoke. It hit Tae-Kyung in the chest, bouncing off his armor but erupting in a shower of blinding red sparks and phosphorus fire. Tae-Kyung screamed, batting at the flames. Chaos erupted. Tae-Kyung dropped to the floor as heavy machine gun fire tore through the room from outside. He looked toward the window. Through the smoke and the shattered glass, he saw the boat. It had run aground on the lawn. Jinsu was manning the mounted gun and running toward the house, holding a pistol she must have taken from the boat's emergency kit. Was Zola. She wasn't running away. She was running into the fire. Tae-Kyung felt a surge of energy that defied logic. He wasn't going to die today. Not when she was watching. He swept the legs of the guard, holding him. He grabbed the guard's fallen rifle. Tae-Kyung was recovering, raising his gun. Tae-Kyung didn't hesitate. He fired. 3 shots. Tae-Kyung fell. The remaining guards looked at their fallen leader. They looked at the heavy machine gun outside. They looked at the demon rising from the floor inside. They dropped their weapons. Silence returned to the swamp. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was the silence of aftermath. Tae-Kyung stumbled out onto the porch. He was bleeding from a cut on his head. His suit was ruined. Zola was standing there. She was breathing hard. She lowered the pistol. "You came back," Tae-Kyung whispered. He sounded like he was witnessing a miracle. "You idiot," Zola sobbed. She ran to him. She collided with him, nearly knocking him over. She wrapped her arms around his neck. "I told you," she cried into his neck. We walked together. Tae-Kyung held her. He buried his face in her hair. He shook, not with fear this time, with relief, with love. "I surrender," he whispered. "I surrender to you." 1 year later, the small coastal town of Nisna, South Africa, is known for its oysters and its quiet lagoons. It is a long way from New Orleans, a long way from Seoul. The cafe on the waterfront was small, but it was always busy. It smelled of roasting coffee and fresh pastries. Zola wiped down the counter. She looked tired, but it was a good tired, the kind that comes from building something of your own. The door opened. The bell chimed. A man walked in. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt covered in sawdust. He had been working on the new deck outside. He looked healthy, tan. The shadows under his eyes were gone. He walked up to the counter. "Table for one?" Zola teased. "Actually, I am looking for the owner." Tae-Kyung smiled. "I have a complaint." "Oh, really?" "Yes. The architect tells me the new extension will be finished ahead of schedule. He wonders if he can get a free coffee as a bonus." Zola leaned over the counter. She kissed him. A slow, lingering kiss that tasted of honey and peace. "I think we can arrange that." She turned the machine. She brewed a fresh cup. "Rooibos." She slid it across the counter. Tae-Kyung wrapped his hands around the warm mug. He looked at his hands. They were calloused from carpentry, but they were steady, rock steady. He looked at Zola. "Thank you," he said. "For the tea? For the wind?" he said. Zola smiled. She touched his hand. "You're welcome, my love. Welcome home." If you love this story, drop a like and share it with someone who needs to believe in second chances. Comment below, what's the one thing you would risk everything for? Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that touch the soul. Until next time, keep your heart open. You never know who might walk through the door.